Hello everyone, my name is Paige Caldwell, and today I am presenting my unit plan on risk-taking, experimentation, and problem solving. This unit plan was written for 8th grade, but it could be used for 6th or 7th grade as well. The estimated time of completion is 6 weeks. Risk-taking, experimentation, and problem solving, I believe, go hand in hand. I think that allowing students to take risks and experiment in the classroom before they start working on their final projects helps them to make more informed decisions and to be a little more innovative in how they approach problems. When they create experiments with their materials and with their concepts, it tests assumptions and builds a knowledge base for them on how those materials and concepts are going to work. In that way, I believe that it is very much related to problem solving. It allows students to approach problems with a knowledge base that maybe they didn't have before. I want to talk about inspiration as well, because in the last 2 lessons in this lesson plan, we talk a large amount about how inspiration can come from multiple places, and how when students are allowed to base their projects on inspirations or interests of their own, it can help them build a sense of identity, it can help them feel seen and heard, and feel appreciated for their identity in their interests. The first lesson in this unit plan, is called Sunday Sketches, and it is inspired by Christoph Niemann, who is an artist, an editorial illustrator, who basically started this method of taking ordinary objects and playing around with them until he can find an image to create with that object. I usually do this on the first day of classes with my students before we go over the classroom expectations or anything else. And the reason I do that is because it helps them to kind of set a tone of playfulness in my classroom, and it also helps them to search and discover all the things that are in the room. So it's particularly good for students who have never been in my classroom before, because they learn through exploration where all the materials are. It also helps with the children who are afraid that they can't draw or they can't make imagery because they don't think that they have the skills. Using this lesson, they're able to put a majority of the work on the object and just kind of make simple lines that help them create an image. So it builds confidence in that way as well. The only materials that you need for this lesson is copy paper, a pencil or a marker, anything they want to draw with, and then random objects and materials of their choice that they find around the classroom. So we start out by watching a TED Talk by Christoph Niemann, in which he discusses what his Sunday sketches are and how he does them and what he's gained from this in his career. He also talks a little bit about his career and what it's like being an editorial illustrator, and he covers visual languages, which ends up connecting to another project that we do later that is not covered in this unit. The main focus of this project is to emphasize the process of art making over the final product. None of the objects are glued down, and so as soon as the student is done taking the picture of the image that they create, they disassemble it and they make another one. They are encouraged to make as many Sunday sketches as possible before the end of class. So after we watch his video, and we talk a little bit about who he is, we discuss and analyze some of his images. We talk about all the Sunday sketches, and we look at some previous student Sunday sketches. They're only given 2 constraints, and that is that they must give their object that they choose a new purpose or identity, and the object, if it is removed from the drawing can no longer make sense. Students are allowed to explore the classroom freely, gather materials that they would like to use, and collect 3 to 5 random objects. Once they've done that, they return to their desk with their materials, and they begin the creative process. They examine their objects from different angles, place them on the paper, change the lighting. They will continue to experiment with their objects until they found either an image to create or they make the decision to move on to another object. Students then begin drawing as a sort of process of elimination. They create, analyze, and begin again until they find a concept that works. Once they've found a marriage between their object and the concept, they create the drawing and place their object, and then I come around and take a picture. Or for those students particular about their angles, I allow them to take the picture with my phone. The image is then posted in the Google Classroom so all their peers can see it. The Sunday sketch is then deconstructed, and students start the process all over again. In the last 10 minutes of class, we return all the materials from where they came, and we have a discussion about the assignment and the choices that they made when constructing their images. Students are responsible for their own distribution and cleanup during this process. I do not pick up the stuff for them. One of the goals of the assignment is to allow the student to explore and become familiar with their studio. So they begin this assignment by searching the classroom for random objects, and they are not limited to what materials they can or cannot use. At the end of class, they have to return all the objects to where they originally got them. This self-guided exploration and recall are instrumental in building a sense of familiarity in the classroom. Students moving forward are able to collect and return supplies on their own with no guidance from me whatsoever. As a class, we discussed the assignment and the decisions that were made when they were making their images. We talk about what works well, what didn't work well, why they think it did or did not work, how the process made them think about how they view imagery, and what was the most striking thing they noticed during the process. Following the first class period that we do this in, we engage in a group critique where I project all of their images onto the screen, and we have a discussion about what they got out of it personally, and excuse me, they explain to their classmates their thinking and process behind the images that they produced. Classmates then give suggestions on how to improve. And this is where my assessment comes in. It's very informal. I can assess how well my students understood the objectives by observing these class critiques. Their willingness to discuss these experimental art pieces with one another, provide and accept feedback, means that the community building aspect of this project was successful, and the articulation of their own creative process and defense of the choices that they made tell me that they were focused on the process more than the product. Students who mention failed concepts that caused them to disassemble a Sunday sketch and start over are a mark that the risk-taking was encouraged during this lesson. The second lesson is the Tinker Hatfield shoe design lesson. Tinker Hatfield works for Nike, and he is one of the most famous shoe designers in the world. He is credited with creating the Michael Jordan Air Jordan line, or really saving it from bankruptcy or Michael Jordan leaving Nike. In this lesson, we talk about how inspiration can come from many different places, and how there are many careers out there that students maybe didn't think of. And also we talk about risk-taking again. Students are introduced to Tinker Hatfield by watching an episode of Abstract on Netflix. There's one all about Tinker Hatfield and his career. After we view the episode, we have a class discussion about what they have viewed. I guide the discussion by asking them questions about where Tinker Hatfield got some of his inspirations and his career, how he started out, and how he got into footwear design in the first place. Students then generate a list of a list of problems that are personal to them or hobbies. And they begin to brainstorm how they can design a shoe around either this hobby or how to solve the problem that they wrote down in their sketchbooks. The assessment for this part of the assignment, because this is a large assignment that is broken down into multiple parts, is also very informal. I listen to what the students have absorbed from the video, and they express their thoughts and questions. I can track how much they retained from the video by what they discuss. They also discuss with me and their peers the different ideas that they write down. So following that, when they come back to the next class, they will take their list of generated ideas and narrow it down to one that they want to focus on, and then they will begin researching. They are trying to develop their shoe design concept in this step, and they start sketching out their designs. Students will develop a spreadsheet of a cost analysis and breakdown of the production of their design. They will determine how much to sell their design in order to make a profit, and they will determine if they need technology or if that technology exists. They research their design to see if it's already been made, and if so, if they can alter it to fit their own needs or expand upon the original idea. We talk a lot about copyright when that happens. I give them a Google slide that details what it is that they need to turn in, and we go over it together and they ask questions, and we take a look at the rubric for this section, which is different than my normal rubric because it pertains specifically to what it is I'm expecting them to turn in for just this part. Students are then allowed to work independently and gather their research, sketch their designs, and build their spreadsheets. For their assessment, they need to make sure that they turn in a proposed list of materials that they need for their shoe, research on shoe construction, cost of materials, and their concept, a spreadsheet of the cost breakdown and retail price, and the thumbnail sketches of your design, which 5 are required at least. Then they move straight on into the final product of this assignment. They develop their final drawing of their design based on their sketches, and they create an ad for their design. They also create a presentation for their classmates. In this section, they are encouraged to model their presentation as a pitch. They may use any method they choose for presentation, and they've chosen all kinds of methods, Google Slides or little presentation trifold posters. Their classmates are given a fake budget, and they have to choose which designs that are presented to them that they want to spend their budget money on. So their goal is to sell their design to their classmates. After each presentation, the class critiques and questions the presenter, and then the students record if they will invest their shoe or not. Invest their money into the shoe or not. The assessment of the presentation is the final product and overview of the concept, the pitch, which is why should we buy your shoe, the ad that they have to create, which they are allowed to create however they would like, Instagram, Facebook, video, it doesn't matter, and a clear and easy to understand and presented within 3 minutes. The assessment of the final piece that they create, which is also choice-based, so they can either create a little sculpture of their shoe, which some have done, or a painting or a drawing. Some kids do it digitally, just depends on what they're more comfortable with. That assessment follows my normal rubric, which I will present at the end of this slideshow. We then move on into Ruth Carter. I introduce her to the students the same way that I introduced Tinker Hatfield. There is an episode of Abstract. There we go. That is all about Ruth Carter and her career. Ruth Carter is a very famous costume designer, and she is known for taking inspiration from different cultures that she's trying to represent. Probably most famous nowadays for the Black Panther costumes that she created. So, once again, we watch the video and then we discuss her life and career and all the places that she pulls from for inspiration. We do the same kind of thing where they generate questions and things while they're watching it. And at the close of the episode, I ask them to raise their hands and share their thoughts and questions. This kind of begins an organic conversation, which is guided by both me and the students. They really get excited about her because she worked on Black Panther. They're then asked to partner with a classmate and begin discussing a book, play, or time period they would like to explore through costume design. Usually I partner with another teacher when I do this assignment, so it just depends on which teacher wants to partner with me. I've partnered with the English department, so the kids have to create their costumes based on whatever book it is that they're studying at the time. I've also partnered with history teachers where they have to pick a time period of history that they have been studying and they have to do the costumes based on that. And I've also partnered with the theater department, so they have to take the play that the theater department is currently working on and base their costumes on that. The assessment for this part, again, is informal because at this stage I'm just listening to their conversations that they're having with their partners, and they're just generating different ideas of what it is that they want to focus on. They then go into the research portion of this. They're allowed to discuss with their partner their list that they create, and from there they determine which time period they want to focus on, and they begin researching that time period and sketching out different designs for their assignment. Some kids make like vision boards where they collect different images from that time period. They're given a Google slide detailing what they need to turn in, and we go over it and they ask questions, and we look at the rubric for the section of this project, which is again different. Students are then allowed to work with their partners some more and make sure that they have everything together. The assessment for this would be that they turn in their research on the time period and the clothing of the time period. They research the fabrics of the time period, and they sketch out a costume design. Again, I always require 5 different thumbnails, and they propose what materials and supplies they want to use to create the final design. This has a lot to do with if they have certain fabrics, what kind of material will lend itself better to representing that fabric in their final drawing. So then together with their partner, they develop a final display and a final piece to represent their costume. They create the display using a trifold display, kind of like a science fair, and they must include explanations for the designs that they made, the logic behind why they chose the fabrics and the design that they chose. When all the projects are complete, the trifold displays will be put on tables in the main hallway, and the students will observe each project. Individual students will choose one to critique in their sketchbooks. They will then give those critiques to the students who created the displays so that they can read the feedback on their projects. The presentation has its own rubric in which the research is easy to read and understand. Fabrics used in the costume design are either physically or visually represented, which goes back to actual texture versus implied texture, so stacking knowledge. And then the final costume design is displayed prominently, and the overall look of the display is neat and organized. Their final piece is judged and based on my typical rubric that I use for most classes, for most projects. In this rubric, it's 100 points, and I created it with the help of my students. And we decided that including visuals would be a really good way to help students understand and read the rubric. And so the first section is thumbnails, because I always require 5 thumbnails, and then craftsmanship, which is visually represented, effort, participation, and time management, and that has a lot to do with their discussions, whether or not they participated in the class discussions, understanding and mastery of the objectives of each project, and then creativity. These are some student examples of the 3 projects. The one all the way on the left is a design done by a student based on the Ruth Carter project. The one in the middle is based on the Christoph Niemann project, and then on the right is an ad and shoe completely designed by one of my students based on the Tinker Hatfield project. And then these are my references. Thank you.